So tiny homes have kind of turned into a big deal in the last few years. From TV shows to documentaries to books to startup companies popping up all over the place. If we take a look at Google Trends, searches for tiny homes have just exploded since around 2013, especially in the Midwest. And with the ability to purchase a tiny home on Amazon for as little as $10,000, I can absolutely see the appeal of buying a tiny home. But the truth is, there's a lot of additional costs and challenges with tiny homes that you should really consider before you hit that buy now button. So today I'm gonna go through the 7 hidden costs of building a tiny home. So first I just want to point out, it's actually pretty difficult to get financing for a tiny home. You can't just go to your local bank and get a mortgage like you would with a typical home. Many tiny homes are actually considered a modified trailer, which is not something that most lenders provide financing for. So to get around this technicality and secure financing for your tiny home, many consumers just register their tiny home as an RV instead. Now this can also open up a whole nother can of worms because many RV loans don't allow you to secure your RV to a foundation. And many RV parks don't allow you to stay there for longer than 30 days. But if your tiny home is affordable enough, you may be able to take out a personal loan from your bank. But the challenges with this is that many personal loans charge a 10 to 15% interest rate. This is much higher than the typical 3 to 4% interest rate you see on a typical home loan. And with the average tiny home costing just under $60,000 to build, that's a lot of interest that you're gonna be paying every single year on that loan. So if you are planning on purchasing a tiny home, cash may be the best option for you. Another thing you want to consider is that the purchase price of your tiny home is only part of the overall cost of building a tiny home. If you're securing your tiny home to a foundation, you can't forget about the local building permits and inspections that are required. Now these range dramatically depending on where you live, and they can be as cheap as a few $100s to as much as a few $1,000s. So if you're buying a $10,000 tiny home, you may end up spending 10 to 20% of the value of that tiny home just in local building permits. Another major concern is that you may have a hard time actually finding a location for your tiny home. So let's say you wanted to build a tiny home on an actual foundation. Well, now you need to worry about your local state, county, and city legislation and building codes. So things like head height, stair railings, and egress from bedrooms are all things that you now need to consider in building your tiny home. And if you're buying a kit or a pre-made tiny home, it may not already be in compliance with your local ordinance. And then unfortunately, in an attempt to keep property values up, there are some cities and communities that straight up just have a restriction on building tiny homes. Simply registering your tiny home as an RV may be a simpler solution to circumvent many of these legal hurdles. But the cost to use an RV park may range anywhere from $500 up to $1,500 a month. So next, the actual cost to build your tiny home may not give you the actual savings that you originally thought. The median cost per square foot to build a traditional home in the US is $101. But the estimated median price per square foot to build a tiny home is actually $300 per square foot. And the average tiny home is between 100 and 400 square feet. So why the big difference? Well, when you're building a traditional home, much of the home is just open space. It's just empty rooms. Building a large open bedroom is going to be far cheaper than building a room like the kitchen or the bathroom. But with a tiny home, you're essentially only building the expensive rooms. Another big factor is that with the traditional home, you're benefiting from the economy of scale with the building material. So what I mean by this is price of things like drywall and windows and doors and cabinets have come way down because they're producing them at such a high volume. But many tiny homes require specialty items that are not mass produced, such as couches that fold out to beds, or maybe stairs going up to a loft that also double as storage. So if you're looking for the biggest bang for your buck, a traditional home may be a better value. Another factor to consider is that the appliances in a tiny home can actually get pretty expensive. Since size is a priority, many of your appliances actually have more than one purpose. And because of this, they can actually cost more than a larger traditional appliance. Insurance can also get pretty complicated with a tiny home. So many insurance companies just simply won't consider them a permanent residence and just won't offer insurance for them at all. Although some will consider it an RV and offer you an RV insurance if you have an RV certification. But even this will kind of complicate things, and you most likely still will not have as much coverage as you would with a traditional homeowner's insurance. Although there are a few companies that are emerging now who understand the tiny home movement and are offering insurance specifically for tiny homes. But just know that you're probably going to have a hard time with your traditional bank or insurance company. And probably one of the biggest issues is that resale can be complicated. So traditional homes in the US appreciate on average about 3% in value every single year. But mobile homes, on the other hand, typically depreciate in value, not appreciate in value. And now with the emergence of these high quality tiny homes built on an actual foundation, it's a little unclear of how well their property value is going to hold up in 10, 20, or 30 years. We just don't really have that data yet. In many cases, the land itself that the tiny home is being built on is going to be more valuable than the tiny home itself. And because of how affordable tiny homes are, many buyers may choose to just have a new tiny home built rather than purchasing a 20, 30-year-old tiny home. And this could really affect the resale value of a tiny home down the road. Hey, if you want to learn 10 strategies to completely pay off your mortgage early, check out this video I did right here. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you over in the next video.